Renaissance in gaming, and I'm going to ask the panelists to come up and join me. We're going to basically be talking about, what are the foundations for the next era of the gaming's golden age. So if Teemu and John and Oliver and Timur, if Timur's here yet, I'm not too sure, we will kick off. Come on up. So one thing I never remember to do, because I've been doing this for so long, is to tell people who I am. So I'm Oscar Clark. I've been around forever. I'm currently working on a game platform around live operations called Arcanix. We're basically trying to change the way that you manage your live ops games by giving you transparency of what's happening. Very different for the kind of things that the guys at Metaplay are doing, which is where we hold that information, how we manage those games. So I've been involved and interested in live ops games since it started and was running a thing called Wireplay back in 1998. So 27 years of thinking about live experiences, which is a bit of a while. And I wrote a book called Games as a Service. Never mind. So moving swiftly on, let's get everyone to introduce themselves. John, tell us all about yourself and what do you do?
So is this working? Everyone can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay, good. So I'm John Wright. I'm the Vice President of Mobile Games at Kwalee. We're a British developer and publisher of hybrid casual and casual games. We do have a PC console division, but that's another guy. And it's my job to basically lead all of the studio efforts to build internal games, publish third-party games, and market successfully all of those games.
Nothing important then?
No, I manage 200 people globally.
Yeah, just a few.
Yeah.
Oliver, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Oliver. I work as a contractor. I go into companies and help on operations things, fix stuff. I started in marketing. Found that a little bit boring once it became too much of a playbook. And now help on operations things. Usually companies don't call me if everything is going well. But when it comes to like change management, thinking of revising strategy, etc., that's when they call me and ask me to come in and help them.
And he has a fantastic ability to be able to prod us in the right way so we don't just be complacent, which we will find out later, I am sure. And Timur, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Metaplay.
Yeah, fair enough. Glad to be here. Teemu, nice to meet you all. I'm one of the co-founders and chief product officer at Metaplay. We do backend technology. I was founder of a studio called PlayRaven that was acquired by Rovio, and instead of games, now I'm here to fix why making games is so hard.
Exactly. Let's make making games a little bit easier. I mean, not least, there's enough things going on. So we're going to talk a little bit about the framing of this. So the guys at Metaplay pulled together a fantastic document. You can go get it on the web. Framing the games industry as in a state of renaissance. And what was the renaissance about? It was a re-emergence of intellectual, of artistic and creative endeavor. So Timur, tell us a little bit about why do you guys look at this era we're in now, having come out of, let's face it, a fairly tough 18 months or so. Why do you think we're now going to head into a renaissance period?
Yeah. So for the last 2 years, right, even here in the conference, it's always like getting the vibe check of how's things going. The past 2 years, doom and gloom all over the place because of the last fireside chat, and as you mentioned, the playbook doesn't work. And if, as a developer, you feel like I've done all these choices, I put, bet the barn and everything onto this playbook, and it doesn't work, then what is left? And that's the feeling of doom and gloom. So, what's changed now? What we're seeing with our customers, as we're talking about new projects and new startups, there's clearly things are happening on the attention economy side. There's more opportunity in distribution outside of the app stores. There's new payment models in all of those stores that have nothing to do with Apple or Google and so on. And there's honestly access to new kinds of audiences, new partnerships. So there's new. And then there's obviously AI and so technologies that make it faster to develop. Again, smaller teams are able to play, and companies like Metaplay and others that then kind of help you out on the deep end of it. So all of these together, it seems like there's reasons to be excited.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I think for me, there's some interesting articles out there at the moment talking about the I think the phrase is enshittification of the incumbent platforms, Google in particular, and I think this movement to try and see that there is now opening opportunities. Now, Oliver, do you see the same thing? Are you as optimistic about this change, or do you have a different kind of perspective on it?
Well, even though I'm German, I am an optimistic. I am actually an optimistic person. I do think things are extremely challenging, and taking the temperature check here yesterday, it's not looking better for 2025, to be very honest. However, it's a big industry, which does mean, depending on what your expectations are, there is opportunity there, for sure. It just is maybe not a VC play anymore because you're not going to lead the world with your studio, etc. That's all established. But for smaller teams to find their niche with something unique and not just doing what everybody else has been doing, I think there is opportunity. So that's also where there is opportunity for a renaissance, for something around the creativity, around creating something unique. We haven't had for the last 6-7 years a new genre or anything like that. It's really about time. If people just copy because somebody is successful with the same game, that's not going to fly.
Are we going to be shocked if players don't flock to it? Yeah.
But there is opportunity, and if you don't have the expectations to be a world dominator with your studio, you can be very successful. I bet there are hundreds of studios out there that none of us here have ever heard of that are very, very successful.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's something else. But talking about ones who have been successful and hope to continue to be so, John, are you? Because I think what Oliver's talking about feels right to me. Like we've seen growth coming back, but we still see ongoing fractional kind of tension. That actually seems to me an opportunity for innovation. That's
definitely
a provoker of innovation. How do you feel?
Yeah, look, I think if we're realistic, I do believe 2025 is going to be a much more positive year, but a big component of that will be innovation. So if we're talking like HTML5 games, if we're talking about AI to better assist with optimization, to speed up production, all of these things will make it better. I think the elephant in the room is new games. Launching a new game has never been more difficult now than it has ever been in my career in games. It is much easier for developers to look at games that they launched 2-3 years ago that have some traction and prolong them by doing, and what we're going to cover today, live ops. Something new to market is very difficult.
I do like a bit of live ops.
But yeah, if you're going to get something in market, which is like a +1 strategy, right? Traditional gaming +1. So you see a match free, you say, okay, we're going to do a +1. What does that mean? It means make a slight variation and tap into an established TAM. Right.
It was Matthew, who used to be at King and runs his own team now, was saying to me a long time ago, that the +1 strategy only works when the +1 includes simplify first, then add. Going back to basics, I think, is a really kind of essential part of that. Because I think what we often see is people see the game that was the finished product and adding to that, rather than seeing what led to that game to be successful and adding to what led, not to the finished product. I think that's a different one.
Yep.
So obviously you mentioned the magic words live ops. Interesting one at the moment when you see Sony shutting down games that were live ops. I would argue a lot of that comes down to the tension we've currently got in the market, because whilst we've got, I think the phrase that you guys have highlighted, 75% of developers being optimistic about tooling, the Griffin Gaming Report 23 talked about 88% of developers looking for new tools because the tools that were on offer weren't good enough. And I know you guys do an amazing job about sort of making sure that you're creating tools, but we have had 5+ years where we haven't necessarily been able to trust third-party services. But you guys specifically, and I think there are others out there, I'm not trying to sort of just blow smoke up Teemu. But why is that important? What is the trust do? And particularly for me, why is it so important to get the tooling right?
Yeah, That is a really difficult question. I'll try to give you like less than an hour answer.
Yeah.
But basically, I feel like, this is just a message I'm receiving sort of from the field, that there's the dream of, I want to make a game and then I want to make that game live for a very long time, and something live ops. I don't quite know what that means, but like we'll need to figure this out. So then when you're picking tools at the time when you're building, you don't yet know what you need. You try to figure it out. You fly the airplane at the same time as you're building it, that experience. And then the disappointment, let's say, in the tooling, whether it's internal or whether you're buying it off the shelf, is that the promise of, hey, do this and you'll be able to do live ops does not hold unless you know beforehand what you're about to do. So I feel like 5 years ago, let's say, very few people knew what it looks like, what it feels like to be successful at scale. What does it feel like to have 150 people on a team trying to push out content and make something amazing about it? Now we do know a little bit more. And for example, us, we're able to then incorporate that into our product and be able to document it, talk about it, teach it, and kind of forecast a little bit what that's going to be. So that makes it easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we actually, just to put a note on that, we this year as Kwalee, or 2024, was the year we decided to deprecate our internal solution and use third party for the first time in our existence in 12 years of business.
And that's a tough one to do when you've had history of games, of teams like GameSparks and Chili Connect being acquired, and then the people who acquire them decide they're not going to do, support backwards compatibility. That's incredibly, what got you over that challenge?
In terms of making the decision?
The fear factor of what happens if this third party...
It's what a lot of it is coming from what Teemu said, because we are a games company. We understand how to make fun core experiences. We understand how to make engaging experiences that retain users' attention. We are not per se a technology company, right? Teemu, who has a much broader understanding of the industry by having multiple partnerships and seeing exactly what each developer wants, and equally, developers are fickle creatures. We say we want this, but actually what we need is something else.
Your words.
The point is you have to really understand what you should focus on.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I do think I do think one of the problems that we have as an industry is also that we try to very often do too many things. I've seen teams raise a lot of money, great, that's all fine. They raised it on creativity and their ideas, etc. And then they've been busy for years just managing people, hiring, organizing shit, etc. and weren't really able to do what they're really, really good at. Maybe it's time to kind of look at our work model as well and say like, okay, there are teams that are really good at creative, and there are teams that are really good at production, and there are teams that are really, really good at live ops. There are reasons why, companies like, let's say, Scopely or something, outsource basically all their live ops into South America because they're like, okay, well, that's not our strong point, right? While it's growing, fine, we're going to support this, Monopoly Go, etc. But all the older titles, we give that to others. Right?
And one of the things when I'm consulting or training people on live ops, it is mostly the problem where they don't understand that the processes for a pipeline are different from the processes to make the game for release. And it's almost like the reverse. It's almost like we have to think backwards because Halloween isn't going anywhere. we can't delay, we can't leave the Halloween update for 3 months. It just doesn't work.
Yep.
So, moving swiftly on. So, obviously the technical kind of tools and platforms is an evolving place. We're starting to see some progress again, I think, in terms of good, solid, secure platforms. We're seeing this understanding of training. In terms of the other side of the renaissance, are we seeing that this more firm foundation is leading us to more interesting content experiences, or is it too early to say that yet?
It's not. In fact, if you're interested, visit our booth where we're actually showing up some of our past games, but more importantly, some of the games that are upcoming, that are doing something new, that I'm personally interested in, that are only possible now, not necessarily just because of us, but basically, for example, teams using AI to be able to deliver massive amounts of content, visual content as a small team, that you don't have to hire 2 outsourcing studios to work in tandem to fill in your product catalog, if you will.
Yep.
That you're able to deliver that experience as a small team, which also means that you're able to learn and become better at it as a small team faster, so you get to higher quality. Or we have BitMagic that are generating full game worlds from prompts. Utter insanity, I love it. And so on. So there is a step function of being able to do something on top of the foundation, where the foundation is understanding of, okay, it's a service model thing, this is how the business is going to work, and here's how we're going to do customer support, whatever.
I think the only challenge I would throw into the room here is if we're getting so much better at kind of creating these content treadmills cheaper and cheaper with more and greater experiences, it basically means that the long-term kind of games will be clogging up, I think, the attention for kind of new content, and that will make it harder and harder and harder for anybody with a great new game idea to get anybody to play that.
See, I'd go a bit further. I think the trouble with taking the content treadmill approach is you're not creating an experience that's focused on player utility. It's not creating an experience that is taking you further. It's thinking a bit like stack 'em up high rather than creating long-term, emotionally connecting experiences. For me, I think we're not thinking enough like soap operas. We're just thinking about retail stores where we're stacking things high, in my opinion. But equally, I'd say there's a lot of anxiety about AI and machine learning when there doesn't need to be. AI and machine learning is a great tool, even when you're making those assets through your third-party providers, because it speeds the process to decide what are the right things to do. So that for me, it works both ways.
But also, I'll interject in the interest of making the panel spicier.
Yeah,
I disagree. So, yes, at least what I'm seeing on the good stuff, if you will, is that whether it's, I'm gonna say AI, magic word, but like efficient workflow, something. The smaller your game team is, then the higher quality output they can produce. That's just a claim I'm able to make. So that then, for example, I love the soap opera metaphor, that some of this stuff, you kind of don't want the soap opera to end, but you want every single episode to be of high quality.
Yes.
Now that's really difficult to do if it takes 100 people 5 weeks to deliver that episode, because you have to de-risk every single one. But if you can do those with 2 people, 3 people, then you're able to put more heart into it.
And equally, doing smaller numbers of things that are more effective is much more interesting.
Less but better.
Less but better.
Yeah, but it, as I said, it clogs up the kind of attention span of users. So you're watching the soap opera for 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years.
Nobody
about
else
70 years when
nobody
Coronation
else will come up with a new soap opera that you're then interested in, right?
Yeah.
It just
until
makes
they
it
do.
extremely hard. Yeah, sure. But it makes it just harder and harder for any new incumbent to kind of get some attention. And that's really the challenge that we're facing these days, I really feel.
I want John to come in as well, but I'm going to throw another bit in the puzzle, which is I don't think it's necessarily this live ops mindset isn't necessarily limited to a single game. The idea of managing your portfolio of games as a community experience, not necessarily having consistency between each game, but the ability to connect with the players on an ongoing basis does alleviate, I think, some of that risk. Some of it.
Yeah. I would say, actually, if we're talking about AI in particular for in live ops basis, so if we're saying using AI to create more frequent events in a much quicker way, we could effectively find ourselves in a race to the bottom where quality keeps dropping, and then the user experiences start dwindling, session times start dropping, and users start looking for new games. If we look at the counter of that, if you look at Supercell or if you look at Voodoo, the amount of IP integrations which are now popular, Transformers Takeover, Godzilla Takeover, Teenage Mutant Hero Takeover, these events are built off of a lifetime of brand recognition and value.
Absolutely.
And users flock to these games based on an emotional response or nostalgia based on this stuff.
100%.
So the teams that will win, if everyone's just blasting live ops with AI to put low stuff out or low quality stuff out, eventually the guys who do spend the money will just win because everyone will want to see the quality.
But to your point, it seems to me what you're saying is actually we've got to make things that players want. And if we just stack them up, we're not going to be making the things that players want.
Correct.
Yeah. So with this in mind, what does it look like? So does this efficiency of us being able to create better tools, to be able to create better connection, to use AI smartly, to do it, to make it to optimize our generation of assets and materials, our ability to understand what's going on, what does that do to the market and how does that change that? Is it Ollie's worry that we're clogging up content, or is it more that there's an opportunity to do something more interesting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was actually talking about this last night when I should have been sleeping. And first of all, forecasting is hard, especially if you're forecasting the future.
Yep.
But it does seem like games are definitely, as you say, are going the way of music, where you're going to have basically endless amounts of everything, most of it mediocre, if not offensively mediocre. But still, people want to find the good stuff, and there's something that there's an emergent need for discovery and forming cultures around the things you discover. Yeah, Swifties or whatever.
Yeah,
that niche is be big.
Taylor Swift, yeah.
So I'm thinking games will absolutely do that. And now the question is, what might be the next steps of it? And so this is me going on a bit of a propeller hat spree, but like if I wanted to make money, I might be looking at solving discovery using AI as a helper in this case, because it turns out it's an amazing way to index content in ways that we don't quite understand. And then most importantly, those discovery tools are no longer gated by Apple or Google or these ecosystems that are putting on brakes. So I would feel like we need to solve discovery. Unfortunately, Metaplay is not going to do that because we don't like money. But I'm really looking forward to somebody telling me, where are the interesting startups doing that.
And I think you can look at the importance of the kind of content creator streamers and how disorganized and fractured that process is. Surely there's a right opportunity to find that. Ollie, what are you thinking in terms of this kind of like, is this an opportunity, or is your concern that the content clogging is... Because I'll give you an example. So I was chatting to Felix Braben, I was recording a podcast with him the other day, and he rightly pointed out to me, I might not like certain types of monetization or content, but there are other people that do. Do we not have enough diversity of choice, taste, etc., that will mean that there is a space for some of that mediocre content, but equally there's a space for some of that higher, what we would call higher quality content?
Look, I'm as I said, I'm positive. I think there is an opportunity. People just need to grab it and need to be willing to take a risk to also find something new and be creative about it. If we're just chasing the success of somebody else and just copying that, yeah, AI will help us to do that faster and as good and whatnot. But that's not creative. That's not our industry. And I see like a lot of people as almost in panic, maybe because they have commitments, whatever, to say like, okay, I need some success, so I'm just going to copy what somebody else is doing. But actually, we have to be willing to try new things, and that's where the renaissance will really come. Yeah. If people are willing to take that risk and say like, okay, this is just not working, we need something new.
And I think for me, the vectors of what that innovation looks like can be varied. It can be in content, but it can be about reducing friction and discovery, reducing the friction in the purchasing of something. What does it mean to purchase? I'm increasingly thinking that this division between premium and free-to-play is almost meaningless, particularly if we think about the kinds of models we can now do. What do you think do you think there are new vectors? Do you think there are new mechanisms, or is it just make better games?
Yeah, I think, look, where can innovation come from? Can it come from a new platform? Well, there have been promises, all sorts, VR and web and whatnot, etc. Will the real innovation come from there? Maybe not so much. Will there be innovation on monetization? Well, how much more free than free can we be? Right? I mean, yeah, we can even give people money, like play to earn, but we will realize that doesn't work either, really. So it has to come from actually gameplay. Mm. That's where the innovation has to.
We can always move the cross where you can close the ad around so no one can find it. Oh, no, I didn't say that. Don't do that. Anyway, Well, from your point of view, where is this renaissance coming from? I know I've spoken about a bunch of stuff, but you're coming at it from the kind of coalface.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, I do think the HTML5 stuff is very interesting. I think if we look at China in particular, WeChat Games is generating millions of revenue a day. Some games actually doing upwards of positive 500,000 a day.
Yep.
And they're basically housed in WeChat, right? Which essentially is linked to every single person in China, right? And they are doing effectively, they have an audience, a huge established audience. They're able to acquire users in the same fashion that we do UA. They are not being hit with the same level of taxation as we are with Apple or Google. So there is higher levels of profitability coming through to the studio. And in a time when EBITDA in studios is at an all-time low, or it's never been harder to achieve, you know, putting into these new sort of locations and ecosystem is really positive. Like Discord are doing a massive investment now into established games within, you know, in Discord, right? Telegram in Eastern Europe is doing massive things. I think we in the Western Western Europe and the West need to also incorporate the same sort of thing. And I'm a little bit shocked that WhatsApp or someone hasn't done this yet.
Well, was it Kakao about 10 plus years ago were trying to do the same thing?
Yeah, in South Korea.
It might happen,
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I'm entirely with you on that. I mean, it's not. The irony in some ways is that, you know, about 2008 or so, there was a point where there was these things called operators, like me, and we were. I was charging 60% revenue share, so I kept 60%, and yet people like Ilkka Paninen and Christian Segazari would still sell, you know, still distribute their games through me, because they had no choice at that time, as we were the most successful operator in the world in terms of revenue per user. And yet, then Apple comes out and they decide they're not going to do the management of the space. They don't do the QA for the game. They require the game developer to do it. And they gave a better revenue share. And lo and behold, massive upsurge. Oh, by the way, and of course, huge distribution of a great device. Massive improvement in the market. I feel like we're in this kind of a similar point where we hear Epic talking about, you know, their reduction of the royalty, but also
12% versus 30.
Yeah, exactly. But also for me, their intention to be platform agnostic, and I think there's some really, really interesting stuff going on there. So I'm thinking about that kind of stuff as exciting. In the space at the moment, we're seeing, I think, some improvement in terms of investment, and I think the phrase that you guys uncovered was 77% of developers expected increased funding opportunities. So is that a sign that we're in exciting times? Or is it just that we've been so low for so long, it's about time we had something good? Go for it.
You go.
Well, so my take on this is, I think I said that earlier, I don't think it's a time for a VC play. There is no opportunity for world domination on a new studio or something like that, so it's going to be really hard. But there is still money there, right? There are grants, especially now in Europe. People realize they need to kind of shape their own destiny, so to say, and there is more money available than ever. Depending on in which country you are, there are opportunities to actually get access to money that is much better than equity. Like,
yeah,
so there is money there.
Yeah.
But you need to know how to access that.
And some
Correct.
deals have been being done. I mean, maybe not as large scale as previous years, but they have actually been done. Timur, do you have any kind of views on it?
Sure. I'll be on the I disagree side of that mostly. But games is a big place. So during the show, I've been talking with some founders that have been now successful at raising funding over the past few months, which was clearly easier than it was over the past year. Yep. And I think the difference there is, for those founders, is that they are making less of a content play and a little bit more of a platform play on what they're doing, which specifically means that they're thinking of what they do as less of I'm going to make a game, and if it's good enough, then hopefully it will succeed. They'll do that, yes, but then they also think about, right, what's my place in the world? What kind of business deals or partnerships will I be able to make? Who am I going to be useful to? So yes, absolutely, Telegram is happening, that we're seeing. Smart use of IP, whatever that is. But it's more of like a holistic approach of like, why will my company exist? And VCs are really kind of attracted to that at the moment. But it's a different playbook. We're kind of seeing
a lot of the games VCs, if you look at what they're publishing, is like, yeah, we're going outside of games, etc. So I don't think there is always the exception. I grant you that, but overall, it's very, very, very hard to kind of raise money from a VC these days in games.
Sure, and the investments are heavily tilted toward like second or third time founders, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I was talking to Axel Ventures, which is absolutely massive, and they sort of just said like, well, Supercell was their fourth best investment they've ever made, next to Meta, for example. That they still see that's a lot of money there. So somebody talk to me, please. So.
I mean, look, this is not going to be an anti-VC conversation, but at the end of the day, I would not go to a VC in this particular time. Raising money right now will effectively cost you more than it will in probably a year. A lot of the funds are coming to the end of their fund. A lot of people will try and sell, they'll try and re-raise, more cash will be in market in 2026. I would hold fire. I would try and do what Oliver said, go to some local governments and stuff. One of my companies that I'm an investor in Norway is about to get a 6-figure check from the Norwegian Film Institute. Yeah. So there is ways and means in every country on this planet to get 6-figure checks for gaming companies without having to sell your soul to, not the devil, but maybe his cousin. I don't know what you'd call him. But, So
I thought you said this wasn't an anti-VC.
No, it's not. Look, I've got very good relationships with VCs, but it's just at this time, as we are now, 3 years ago, it was easy and, cash was easily accessible. You were not going to get, not going to get the investment stretch. You weren't going to raise 5 million and have to give 30% of your company. You would raise 5 million and get 10%. Valuations are lower, they want more, it's tougher. If you can bootstrap, if you can go to government schemes, if you can get a very good angel syndicate. If you don't know Nick Button-Brown, I'm part of his syndicate, he's fantastic, try and get in to speak to him. And a bunch of these other syndicates with other individuals that invest money.
And if you're UK and you haven't got Nick on your block as an advisor, you're probably in a very small minority.
Exactly.
Actually, I think I'm going to ask a question to the audience. So I'm going to ask you to put your hand up if you are optimistic about raising money in the next 12 months. Hands up. Well, you would be. Okay, got a few. How many are pessimistic about raising money in the next 12 months? So how many don't want to raise money? Oh, interesting. Okay. So I just think it's interesting. I mean, so Nick himself has said to me he noticed that there was an improvement last year, and particularly, increasing. But I do think we normally when we run in the UK, we run towards the April financial year because that's when a lot of the SEIS, so the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, and EIS scheme
exactly
pay off. These are massive tax advantages for investors.
Yeah.
So people,
40% tax break.
To that, but I don't think I've seen a huge increase in conversations this year yet.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, if it's because I'm in these circles, I think I'm seeing it a little bit more, Oscar. But like I said, for me, I do believe more conversations are happening, more people are raising, and there is more positivity around it. Teemu said, like, more VCs are opening up. It's just, and just to clarify my point, what I am saying very clearly is I, John Wright, would not raise, but if you needed to raise to survive, or you needed to raise to get your business to the point of it being successful, then obviously do that. It's just what you have to give up for that money is what you have to value.
Perhaps if you've got something that's so in demand, that's so breathtaking, that there's enough competition for it, you might still manage it.
Yeah.
That will be rarefied.
Yeah, and look, I want everyone to race. It's the more money in the market, the better, right? High tide rises all ships.
And given the scale of the talent that is currently available because of all the redundancies, I still imagine there will be some amazing teams that come out of that.
And I'd actually just like boost on that. We were talking about opportunities earlier, that some of these new opportunities, as a new team, you have to make something new. They're not all that expensive, right? Yeah. So we're a little bit away from, I have to raise 5 million to be able to up the production value.
Yeah, very true.
You're going to Telegram or whatever, then the production values have been reset to a point that now you need to be clever and relevant again. And we are basically giving Metaplay away for free and so on. Like you don't need that initial capital as much.
Yeah.
And if you look at audience tastes, the requirement for high-end graphics is no longer there with the mass market
never
audience.
there.
I love my graphics. Anyway, so let's anyone got any questions before I kind of sum up? Right, in that case, I'm going to basically ask you guys, what's the sort of lesson that you want the audience to take away from them that's going to put them in the best place to really take advantage of what we think is the new Renaissance, Teemu?
Well, that's an easy one.
Yeah. Use your platform.
Yeah, making games is hard. Use Metaplay. But no, I think it's really talking to other people about, discovery is your number one problem. Go-to-market plan is your number one problem. And understanding what for your audience is going to be highly resonant is your number one problem. So let's talk to each other, because there's a lot of knowledge at the moment in the room on what might work. It's sort of the connect the dots moment. So obviously we'll share all of our secrets that we can at the booth, but like more importantly, talking to other developers. Personally, I'd be really interested in looking at sort of content-heavy, modern-day reliant games where you're basically, like if you're making rap music is about today. It's not about what was happening 5 years or 10 years ago. But most of games that we make are about like the past or the past fantasies or some copies of games that have been done before. Let's talk about relevant news stories, because those are more likely to go viral or be sort of relevant on those new platforms. So personally, that's what I would look at.
Cool.
Yeah, if you're a game developer, don't try to do what everybody else is doing. We don't need more of the same games. We really don't. Try to come up with something new. Yes, we all know it's big risk, etc., but with just copying what everybody else is doing, the industry will not survive.
John.
So I'm going to cough now, guys. That's talking for 3 days. No, I'm going to keep it simple. So basically, if you're not doing live ops, please integrate it into your stack as quickly as possible. Try and revisit games that previously were successful. And that's what I'm going to say before I cough again.
I'm going to add to that. Don't get locked in to the battles of the past. Free-to-play versus premium is no longer a relevant question. What's the business model that makes players feel they want and desire and feel comfortable acquiring the things that they love in your game? What's the best way to do that? And the live ops part of that for me is to understand that if we constantly pile high, we make the whole process more complicated, not just to build, but for players to enjoy. And I think the biggest problem for me, the thing that I always see killing games, is that teams aren't thinking in pipelines enough and early enough. And actually, I would say you should be thinking about, actually, how do I structurally deliver things through the server rather than manually, as early as possible, even when you're testing the original game. So anyway, I'm happy to talk more about that. Thank you very much, guys. Anyone got any last-minute questions before I shut down? On that note, I'm going to say thank you very much for my panel. And let's enjoy the delights of the new Renaissance in games, which we expect to come shortly. Right.